Happy Fridays. We're going to have segment one of Gold and Black Live. I want to thank our sponsors. Of course, Brian Neubert and Tom Dienhart are not our sponsors, but they are our mainstays here. But I want to thank Triple X, Greg and Kerry Ayersman, on the hill, but on the level of Purdue tradition since 1929. And of course, State Farm agent Trent Johnson at trentismyagent.com. Hilton Garden Inn, Tara Mason, the good folks down there. We appreciate their support. Gentlemen, we are off to another show, but also I want to also introduce you. Segment two today will be Walter Jordan. Purdue fans will remember him, two-time All-Big Ten guy, still pretty involved with basketball, leadership, et cetera. Always an interesting conversation. Segment three will be Ben Palillo, who's a long-time Purdue track coach, or he was a former Purdue track coach. But we're really going to talk about the life of Carissa Yason. 20th anniversary of her passing, but kind of one of Purdue's greatest athletes ever, not only in track, but in basketball. And Ben's got some insight into that as well. So we'll have that as our third segment. So Brian, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, the Boilermakers in men's basketball will face Minnesota tomorrow in what will be an interesting game by definition, just because it's COVID. What the heck? Minnesota struggled very much away from home. I don't think they've been within double figures in any Big Ten road game. And in their last game, they got beat badly by Maryland at home. But this is a talented Minnesota team that physically, I think, can cause Purdue some difficulty. What say you?
Yeah, Purdue's got the deck stacked a little bit against it without Sasha Stefanovic. I think he's a far more important part of what Purdue does than a lot of people even realize. But I think it's been good for Purdue to have this week of practice. Obviously, that's important when you have to acclimate to not having a key piece. Minnesota has always, been a little bit of a problem for Purdue because it's always got so much athleticism. I think this year, obviously Marcus Carr and Liam Robbins have given them a really good 1-2 punch. Marcus Carr is going to be a handful for Purdue defensively. Purdue's not been great against the dribble. How much of what Marcus Carr is going to want to do against Purdue is going to be predicated on penetrating. I don't know. He likes to shoot step back threes, but he's a very explosive scorer who, Eric Hunter, Isaiah Thompson, and everybody else involved is going to have to do a really good job trying to make him as inefficient as possible, try to wear him out a little bit if you can. But it is going to be a collective effort on everybody. The big guys have to do a good job at ball screens, things like that. It's going to be a real test for Purdue defensively. Liam Robbins, too. Has been transformative for them this year in terms of him stepping right in for Daniel Laturo and filling a big void for them. That's kind of the transfer era now in college basketball. You need a player, just go get one. But his ability to step out and shoot threes, I think, speaks to a certain pressure point for Purdue, where when opponents can drag Purdue away from the basket, their big guys away from the basket and shoot threes, that can be a real problem for Purdue sometimes. So Purdue's going to have its hands full from a defensive perspective. Offensively, they still have to overcome, not having Stefanovic for at least the next two games. But I think it was really important for them to get this week of practice and to kind of be able to, I don't want to say recreate themselves a little bit, but, kind of fine tune some things. So I like Purdue's chances, Saturday night, but I think they are going to have their hands full with Minnesota's athleticism and obviously with Marcus Carr.
Yeah, Brian, halfway through the Big Ten season for Purdue, I think it's safe to say we're all surprised at the one-loss record. I guess you sort of did a checkup of the team earlier this week. Just give us an idea maybe what you expect the latter half of the Big Ten season. It looks like the schedule's lightening up. You hate to say that, but you don't want to take anybody for granted. But it'd be nice to see maybe your expectations for the back half of this Big Ten schedule for Purdue.
Yeah, well, if they could keep their whole team on the floor, I think they'd have a pretty good chance. They had 10 games with all their key players available. They went 7-3, and they were building momentum. Had they kept that momentum going in terms of their ability to have, continuity and continue to grow together as young as they are and whatnot, I think you'd really look favorably on the second half of the schedule. Now, Stefanovic will be back. It's not a deal where, we're talking about him in the past tense here. He's going to be back. They're going to have to recapture that momentum, though. You have a lot of home games down the stretch. You got most of your really difficult road games out of the way very early. Now, Penn State's not going to be a picnic. Maryland's not going to be a picnic. Minnesota's not going to be a picnic on the road. But you got the Iowa, the Illinois, Michigan State, Ohio State out of the way early. You got Indiana out of the way early. You won 3 of them. So you're set up here with a lot of home games. If you get those 2 Nebraska games too, obviously those are 2 games you should be heavily favored in. You still have Northwestern. You should be heavily favored in that one. You have a chance to have some success here down the stretch. You've already put yourself in a position where you're, as of today, I think you're an NCAA tournament lock. And to have done that as young as they are, with all of the disruptions they've had to deal with between Ethan Morton, Eric Hunter, Jaden Ivey, and now Sasha Stefanovic, I think that puts Purdue in, way ahead of schedule here. And the best could be yet to come. They just have to build that momentum back up that they could conceivably have been, quelled by this little disruption with Stefanovic. But they're certainly set up to have some success, especially once Stefanovic gets back.
Yeah, Joe Lunardi has Purdue, I think, as a 6th seed for what it's worth. But by the same token, this is a team that appears to be pretty firmly in the field. And yet you're right, it's pitfalls. You watch what Rutgers did to Michigan State last night. Penn State is dangerous. I know Purdue doesn't have to play Rutgers again in the regular season, but it's really an interesting part of this in terms of how difficult this league is from top to bottom. I mean, there's just not going to be a night off throughout the rest of the season.
Well, the Rutgers thing last night, that had everything to do with Michigan State not practicing for 2 weeks. That had everything to do with COVID-19. I mean, that's just, you can't even argue that. I mean, Michigan State isn't great this year, but they're certainly better than 37 points.
Yeah.
That was simply a function of the unique circumstances of 2020, 2021. But you are absolutely correct. There are no, as trite as it sounds to say, because it is the ultimate media day cliche, is there are no nights off in the Big Ten this year. And I think, Penn State's kind of the face of that. I mean, look what Penn State's been able to do since they came out of quarantine. They gave Purdue all they could handle in Mackey Arena. They beat – who'd they beat? They beat somebody. I can't remember who they beat. They beat somebody. And then they gave somebody else all they could handle the other night. And, Ohio State. They gave them all they could handle. Penn State's a good team, and they're like the 11th best team in the league probably, 10th, 11th best team in the league. And they're tough. I don't think Northwestern's any good, but Northwestern at one time was 3-0 in the Big Ten and ranked. But they are capable. The only team you can really look at in the Big Ten and say, hey, we're probably going to get this one is Nebraska. But I think everybody else, there's not a whole lot of separation, not only between everybody after 1 through 4, but between 1 and 11 pretty much, because it's been that kind of season. Illinois has lost some games. It hasn't, it probably shouldn't have on paper. Minnesota beat Iowa. Iowa not only lost to Indiana, they got routed by Indiana at their place too. It's just one of those years where it is the ultimate, steel cage match in terms of the parity, from 1 to double digits in the league. And, I do kind of wonder if maybe that's not sort of helped Purdue because, concentration is such a big deal for them. There aren't a lot of distractions these days because of, there aren't crowds, anything like that. Perhaps having it where you really have to be dialed in to every game, perhaps that's kind of helped Purdue. There hasn't been that trap game opportunity for them yet. You would have liked to have had some games where you could have won in a one-sided manner so you could get some of these other guys on the floor a little bit more. But that's just not the reality of the league this year. And perhaps that has helped, Purdue in some small way kind of sharpen its focus a little bit.
Yeah, you look at Penn State, they beat Virginia Tech by 20 when Virginia Tech was ranked 20th. And obviously in the Big Ten, they beat Rutgers by 8 about 10 days ago.
Yeah, Rutgers.
And played Michigan tight early in the year to a 4-point game at Michigan. So, yeah, they're very capable. They beat and they had a 2-point loss at Indiana.
And they did that coming out of COVID, too. So they were shut down for X amount of days, and they came to Purdue and played pretty well.
Yeah, they beat Rutgers 4 days after they came out of COVID. So that's correct. So impressive on that standpoint. And yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. All right, we'll switch gears a little bit, Tom. Go back to football. Obviously, we've settled in now with Purdue's 3 assistants on the defensive side of the ball. Transfer portal may have is slowed down because school has started. You had an exit interview with Lorenzo Neal. Still a lot to talk about as we work our way towards the start of spring practice on February 19th.
Yeah, you're right. February 19th, Alan. I'm guessing by doing the spring football calculus in my feeble algebra mind that the spring football game may be March 20th. But stay tuned on that. You got 34 days to execute 15 spring practices from the day you start. So stay tuned there. Maybe we'll see a spring game this year. Fingers are crossed. It's always kind of I don't know. I get a kick out of just getting some glorified version of maybe what the team could look like in the fall. But you're right. Roster movement for Purdue looks like for now, probably not going to be a lot of it. Yes, the portal for Purdue may be slowing down, but it still seems like it's percolating nationally. Boy, I tell you, you follow the rivals Twitter portal site, man. There's it seems like there's 10 or 12 guys a day jumping into it. But you're right. If kids transfer now or they elect to transfer, obviously they can't enroll because classes have started at Purdue. They couldn't arrive until this summer, but still there could be some additions. Guys, I don't know about you, but I still think Purdue needs to add a cornerback and maybe a running back as well. Stay tuned on that. It'd be kind of fun to see your thoughts on maybe portal additions you think Purdue should still be looking for. And then maybe Brian wants to talk about this. Don't forget, guys, coming up, this coming week is the signing day, which used to be the traditional high holy day in college football, which now has become very anticlimactic with the early signing day in December. But, we know Jack Ansell, the Australian punter, is going to come aboard, put his signature on a letter of intent. Will Purdue add anybody else here from the high school ranks, the JC ranks in this signing period? I have no idea, but just something to keep on your radar for everybody.
Yeah, Brian, any take on the obviously Jack Ansell being one, but yeah, we remember that signing day 5 years ago. We'd be loading up with 100 different things, but very different now.
Yeah, last year, historically, signing day has been that day for me where I have to get up at 7 a.m. and I have to start texting people to make sure that they got their letters in and all of this stuff. And I had to work all day the night before to have like 10 stories ready to put up on signing day. And last year, I forgot about it. I woke up in the morning around 10 a.m. I said, oh, hey, it's signing day. How about that? Because it doesn't matter. It hardly matters anymore. It's, for some of the really higher end schools, I think you come down to some of the really higher recruited guys. They tend to, string things out a little bit more. So the SEC, I think it probably still matters for them a little bit more. But most programs want all their classes signed in December. And, Purdue has gotten that done. And that's kind of the name of the game now. I was a little bit surprised so many guys signed early this year because of the unique circumstances of the cycle. But the traditional signing day barely matters anymore. And it's going to matter even less, from here on out, because there are going to be 3 key dates or 3 key moments in the recruiting cycle from here on out. It's going to be the early signing period. That's ultimately going to move up to September probably, but as long as it's in December, then that's the most important day. And then the second most important day is going to be not a day at all, but it's going to be the transfer cycle, because it's going to be freewheeling here from here on out. And it's going to be just as important probably for a lot of people as the high school portion of the process. And then maybe you have your traditional signing day where you get a straggler or 2 every year. I mean, it just doesn't work that way anymore. It just doesn't matter that much anymore. Purdue's signed some really high-end guys during the late period, under Jeff Brom and Rondell Moore and David Bell. But they only did that because those were guys who basically decided early. I think Rondell Moore did. I don't know that for a fact, but I think he knew where he was going. They decided early, but they just wanted to announce at the All-American Bowl. So in order to do that, they couldn't sign in December have that publicized and then announce on NBC that they're going to the school that everybody knows they already signed with. That wouldn't make any sense. So that was just cosmetic, the way that's worked before. But it doesn't matter anymore. It hardly matters anymore for 90% of the programs out there. Purdue will very much be one of them.
All right, we promise, because you're going to be up late Tuesday night with Purdue, Maryland on the road. We'll send you a notice on Wednesday morning to make sure.
Why? It doesn't matter.
I know.
I don't care.
Well, we can say that Jack Ansel.
I have chat on Wednesday. That's it.
That's true.
I have to write a column on Wednesday. You can remind me about that stuff, but
you'll be ready by 1 o'clock.
I think we have the Jack Ansel story covered. So
yes, we do. Tom's done a nice job on that. All right, we will take a short break, gentlemen. Thank you. We make sure you also tune into it'll be our Sunday conversation this week on the site. But Brian and Tom will, and obviously all of Brian's coverage from Purdue's battle with Minnesota tomorrow night in Mackey Arena. So we'll take a short break, bring on Walter Jordan. Gentlemen, we always appreciate your time, and have a good rest of the day.